Good afternoon. Good day to all of you. We are now about to start discussion on chapter 2 of our book. We have discussed chapter 1 already. We're finished. And if you have questions, I'll be very glad to answer your questions. Let me know lang through group chat if you have questions. Uh, Let me share my screen, huh? Okay, this is chapter 2. I hope by now most of you have uh, most of you have read in advance chapter 2. This will discuss lengthily analyzing the transaction. And here are our learning objectives for this section, for this topic, for this chapter. We will be able to describe characteristics of an account, what is an account, and what is a chart of accounts. Sinabi ko na yung last chapter that we'll be discussing chart of accounts. We'll also describe and illustrate journalizing the transaction using the double entry accounting system. Ito na yun. Ito na yung debit credit. We will also describe and illustrate the journalizing and posting of transaction to accounts. The journalization, we will discuss lengthily journalizing and posting of transaction to the ledger or to the accounts of each and every account that is listed in your chart of accounts. We will also prepare an unadjusted trial balance and explain how it can be used to discover errors. It will help you find errors if there are any. Maswerte kayo kasi kayong lahat ngayon ay ang gamit na lang ay Excel, madali na mag-compute. Hindi katulad na nakakaraang kong klase na pinagbabawal ko ang gumamit ng Excel at pinagbabawal kong gumamit ng calculators. We'll describe and illustrate the use of horizontal analysis in evaluating a company's transaction, horizontal from left to right. How do you compare the financial statements? We will also describe the characteristic of horizontal in evaluating company's transaction and describe the horizontal analysis, left to right. Ang vertical nga pala mamaya na yan. Next chapter yan. So first and foremost, describe the characteristics of an account and the chart of accounts. Accounting systems are designed to show the increases and decreases in each accounting equation element as a separate record. This record is called an account. In the previous chapter, we discussed the increase and decrease and the effects of each and every transaction sa accounting equation. A is equals to L plus OE, or owner's equity or capital. Now, each account, cash, accounts receivables, accounts payables, the capital account, the income and the expenses accounts are recorded in each and every account. Ito yung nakaraan natin. If you still remember, this is the transactions for November of Net Solutions. Ito yung continuing problem natin. Remember, yung 25 capital, bumili ng lupa. If you all remember na, bumili ng supplies, inutang, kumita na siya, 7.5, and so on and so forth. You all know this. I don't need to review this anymore. These are the transactions for November. Now, this is a T account. This is a simple ledger. If I may suggest to you, pag kayo ay nag-a-analyze ng transaction, when you analyze a transaction, it would be best na gamitin nyo itong T account. Ito natutunan ko na ako kay college. So pagkat this is the best way for you to analyze each and every transaction. T account, ledger. Dito ang debit, dito ang credit. T account. So this is a title. The account T account has a title, of course. If it is a cash, or accounts receivable, or accounts payable, or capital. The left side of the account is called the debit side, and the right side is called the credit side. Okay. So, ito nangyari. Remember? Si Net Solutions, naglagay siya ng capital. Di ba? Dito. Nag-increase yung cash, debit. Bumili ng lupa, nabawasan, 20,000, credit. Decrease in cash. Decrease in asset, which is cash because he nag-decrease ang kanyang cash nung siya ay bumili ng lupa. Now, kumita siya, di ba? Nung kumita siya, what happened? Di ba? Nadagdagan ng cash niya. So, debit. Ito yung mga expenses, di ba? At ito yung withdrawal. Ito yung inutang niya na supplies. Nagsulong siya na 950, di ba? If you all remember, review your chapter 1, yung ating increase-decrease. And this minus this is equals to the balance of the account. Okay. You all follow? So ito yung nangyari noong November sa cash pa lamang ni Net Solutions. Okay, let me erase this. Now, oops. What happened next? So as of November 30, ang cash niya 5,900 because of the increase, gawa nito, and the decreases in various disbursement of Net Solutions. Debit side of the account and credit side of the account. And that is the balance. Okay. The group of accounts for a business entity is called a ledger. This one, the T account, is the ledger. Simple ledger yan. Simple ledger. In your book, ang makikita nyo doon, if you will go over your books, which I hope by now you already have your books, ay makikita nyo 4-column ledger. Kasi ang ating libro is nakaabang sa computerized accounting system. Hindi mo makikita dyan ang T account na ginagamit niya. Makikita niyo dyan ledger, debit, credit, balance. And the first column is the explanation. Okay. The list of accounts in the ledger is called a chart of accounts. Okay. What is a chart of accounts? Doon nakalista ang lahat na accounts na ginagamit at posibleng gamitin ng kumpanya. Yan ang chart of accounts. Lahat ng accounts na gagamitin niya. Gagamitin at ginagamit. Okay. Maaari hindi pa ginagamit niya, pero gagamitin eventually. Assets are resources owned by the business. A, nasa left side lagi yan. Example, ano example? Cash, supplies, accounts receivables, building, land, other asset, equipment, etc., etc. Liabilities are debts owed to outsiders. Yun ang pinagkautangan mo. Katulad ng biniling supplies. Bumili ng supplies, inutang. So, nag-increase in asset, increase in liabilities. What are the examples of liabilities? Accounts payable, notes payable, wages payable, interest payable. Sir, paano magkautang ng wages payable? Yan yung salaries. Di ba sir, lagi naman bayad ng cash yan? Correct. Pero paano kung dumating ang panahon at nangyayari ng katapusan ng buwan ay Sabado, Linggo. Walang bangko, hindi mo pwedeng bayaran, walang opisina. So, babayaran mo pa siya sa Lunes. So, as of the end of the month, meron kang salaries payable or wages payable. Sir, ano naman yung notes payable? Notes payable, yan yung nag-issue ka ng promissory note na magbabayad ka on a certain date. We will discuss it later on. Interest payable, yan naman halimbawa may inutang ka, mabayad ka ng interest, dumating sa katapusan ng buwan, end of the month, ay weekend, walang bangko, hindi ka makapagbayad. So as of that time, end of the month, ay meron kang interest payable. And owner's equity is the owner's right to the assets of the business after all liabilities have been paid. For a proprietorship, the owner's equity is represented by the balance of the owner's capital account. So, in our example, si Chris Clark Capital, yun yung capital niya. Assets minus liabilities is equals to capital, or capital is equals to assets minus liabilities. Yun din yun. Yun din yung accounting equation. Binaliktad lang. Because capital is equals to assets minus liabilities. At the same breath, asset is equals to liabilities plus capital. Don't forget, don't you ever forget the accounting equation in all your accounting life. Drawing account represents the amount of withdrawals made by the owner. Ibig sabihin nga yung katulad nga yung business entity concept which we discussed in the previous chapter. Expenses, personal expenses of the owner cannot be charged to the business. So, assuming siya ay gusto niyang magkaroon ng konting pera, pagkatapos ng isang buwan, nag-withdraw siya sa kanyang negosyo, panggamit niya sa bahay, pambili ng tissue, pambili ng pagkain, pambili ng gatas ni baby, which are, alam natin lahat, hindi gastos ng kumpanya. You're using the both business entity concept. Okay. So revenues are increases in owner's equity as a result of selling services or products to the customers. Hindi ko na kailangan pag-explain pa na pag kumita ka, dadaming kapital mo. At pag ikaw naman ay nagastusan para sa nagpagkaya ka ng sweldo, nagbayad ka ng renta, nagbayad ka sa kuryente, nagbayad ka sa telepono, ay yun ay kabawasan sa iyong kapital. Ano examples ng revenue? Fees earned, yun ang napag-usapan na natin. Commissions revenue, discuss natin yan. Rent revenue, meron kang building, pinaupahan mo, ikaw ang nagpapaupa, hindi ikaw naupa. So, pag ikaw nagpapaupa, revenue mo yon, kita mo yon, income mo yon. And the using up of assets or consuming services in the process of generating revenues are called expenses. Using up of assets. Using up of assets. Very important yan. Are called expenses. Using up. Gumamit ka ng cash, pambayad ng sweldo. Di ba? Ginamit mo ang cash. So, expenses yan. Bumili ka ng supplies. Bumili ka ng paninda. Expenses yan. What are examples? What are examples? Wages expense or salaries expense? Again, sir, anong diferensya ng wages expense at salaries expense? Wala. Depende yan sa nakasulat sa iyong chart of accounts. Kung ano nakasulat sa chart of accounts mo, yan ay yun ang gagamitin mo. Rent expense, kung ikaw naman ang naupa. Miscellaneous expenses are those expenses which are not identified as wages, rent, and all other expenses. Yung hindi malimit mangyari, yung hindi lagi mong ginagamit na gastos, dyan mo ilalagay. So, this is the chart of account of Net Solutions. Okay? This is the chart of account of Net Solution. So, assets niya, yan ang asset niya. Unearned revenue, mamaya pag-discuss natin yung capital, revenues, expenses. As you go on, dadagdagan natin yan. As we go on with the chapter, madadagdagan at madadagdagan natin yan. Okay? Nasa libro itong lahat, ha? Now, how do you journalize transaction using the double entry system? Okay. Wait, ha? How do you journalize using the double entry system? Ito na yan, in debit credit. All businesses use what is called the double entry accounting system. This system is based on the accounting equation and requires every business transaction to be recorded in at least 2 accounts. Yung pinag-aralan natin sa chapter 1, if you will notice, dalawa rin na naapektuhan. Why did we do that na hindi tayo dumiretso agad dito? It's simply because we want to show you first the importance of the increase and decrease of the each and every transaction for the each and every transaction. Hold on, I'll pause. Huh? Okay, to continue. Double entry system, every business transaction, laging dalawang account ang naapektuhan. How do you show that? Later on, we'll show you. Total debits recorded in this transaction to be equal to the total credits recorded. Pag nag-debit ka ng piso, ang credit mo dapat piso. Hindi pwedeng 50 centimos lang. Hindi balansyado yun. Dapat debit is equals to credit. Or else hindi ba balance in trial balance nyo? Never do that. Kailangan kung nag-debit ka ng 2 piso, ang i-credit mo ay 2 piso. Kung anumang account ang naapektuhan. Okay. This is what I call a cheat sheet. Okay? Cheat sheet. Pwede niyong gamitin yan pandaraya. Ibig sabihin, pwede niyong kodigo. Kodigo na pwedeng gamitin hanggang matapos ang chapter 2. Pero I assume again that after chapter 2, hindi niyo na yan gagamitin. Or at least hanggang chapter 3, hindi nyo na yan gagamitin. Kasi dapat by that time, automatic na sa inyo na pag nag-increase ang asset, debit. Pag nag-decrease ang asset, credit. Pag nag-increase ang liability, credit. Pag nag-decrease ang liability, debit. Pag nag-increase ang capital, credit. At pag nag-decrease ang capital, debit. Tatandaan niyo yan. Isiksik ninyo yan sa isip nyo. Hindi ako magagalit kung gagamitin niyo yan as kodigo sa ngayon. Pero pagtatagal, dapat sa ulado nyo na siya. Na automatic na sa inyo na pag nakita nyong debit cash, increase yun. Nakatanggap ka ng cash, increase yun. May binayaran ka, ibig sabihin nun, nabawasan ng cash mo, credit yun. And so on and so forth. Umutang ka, nadagdagan ng utang mo, nag-increase yung utang mo, credit. Binayaran mo utang mo, nabawasan syempre utang mo, debit yun. Nagdagdag ka ng kapital, dumami ang kapital mo, credit yun. Nagbawas ka ng kapital, debit yun. Okay, sasauluhin niyo yan. Dapat yan automatic na sa inyo. The debit and credit rules for income statement are based on the relationship with the owner's capital. Ito, balance sheet accounts. Ang tawag dito sa assets, liabilities, and owner's capital ay, do not forget, ito ay real accounts or permanent account. Kasi hindi nawawala yan at hindi ikino-close ang balance sheet accounts at the end of the accounting period. Lagi yan meron. Lagi yang nare-retain yan. And next are the income statement accounts. Tatandaan yung mga words na sinasabi ko sa inyo, mga terms, items. Okay? Ang tawag naman dito ay nominal accounts or temporary accounts. Why temporary? As the name implies, yan ay nagsasara, isinasara, ikino-close at the end of the accounting period. Now, tumaas ang income mo, credit. Nadagdagan ang kita mo, fees earned, credit. Nabawasan ang income, debit. Dumami ang expense, debit. Nabawasan ang expense, credit. Minsan nakakalito. Sa umpisa nakakalito yan. Pero basahin nyo lang ng basahin ng libro, maintindihan niya. Drawing account. Pag dumami ang drawing, nag-drawing ka, debit cash, credit, debit drawing, credit cash. So, pag dumami pag nadagdagan ng drawing mo, debit. At pag nabawas ka ng drawing or ibinalik mo yung drawing mo, credit. Again, these are all you can use this as a cheat sheet, kodigo. The sum of the increase in an account is usually equal to or greater than the sum of the decrease in the accounts. Thus, the normal balance of an account is either a debit or a credit depending on whether increases in the accounts are recorded as debit, credit. Ang normal balance, ito yan, yung naka-green, normal balance ng asset, debit. Imaginein mo, pag nag-credit ang cash mo, ibig sabihin nun, ubus na, may utang ka pa. At ang normal balance ng liabilities, liability accounts ay credit, normal balance nito ay credit ng accounts ng capital accounts. Normal balance ng drawing is debit. Normal balance of income is credit. Normal balance of expense account ay debit. Pag nabago, may problema. May mali. Okay? Now, normal balances of assets, debit. If you decrease the asset, credit mo. Normal balance ng liabilities, credit. Oops. No, and when you decrease your liabilities, debit, and so on and so forth. Review this as you read the problems, as you read chapter 2. Reviewin yan, saulahin nyo yan. Kailangan saulado nyo na yan. Again, I will allow you to use that as kodigo. Pero sana pagtatagal, saulado nyo na yan. Hindi ko na rin naman makikita unless mag face-to-face tayo. Okay. Nakita nyo na to. Meron to sagot sa libro. You state for each account whether it is likely to have debit entries only, credit entries only, or debit. Yan ang sagot. Number 1, drawing, debit entries only because the normal balance is debit. Number 2, ang accounts payable, syempre, nadami, naunti, nadami, naunti. Cash, posibleng mag-debit, posibleng mag-credit kasi nadadagdagan ng cash, nababawasan ng cash pag may binayaran ka. Number 4, fees earned, credit entries only because the normal balance ay credit. Supplies, nadami, naunti, kaya pwede mag-debit, mag-credit. Debit entries only, ang number 6, kasi it's an expense. Hindi ka pwede mag-credit ng utilities expense unless may error. Number 1, pag closing na account, pwede kang mag-credit ng drawing. We will discuss that after when we reach when we go to the closing entries. Okay, transaction A. Ito yung kauna-unahan, di ba? Chris Clark opened a business, deposits 25,000. Anong entry? Debit cash, credit, capital. Step 1, you put the date because it happened in November 1. Again, ladies and gentlemen, napaka-importante ng dates. Tatandaan nyo iyan. Debit cash, credit, capital. Remember, pag nag-credit ka, naka-indent. Ha? Naka-indent yan. And this is, you record this in the journal. Hindi pa yung ledger, ha? Journal muna. You record it in the journal. Remember, the journal is the book of original entry. Ha? Journal is the book of original entry. Bakit? Diyan mo nire-record muna agad ang bawat isang transaksyon. So, yung transaction na ito ni Chris Clark, makikita mo na dito, fully explained na. Kailan nangyari? November 1. Ano nadagdagan? Cash, debit. Ano pa nadagdagan? Credit, capital. Ano explanation? Remember, lagi dapat may explanation. Ang bawat entry. At naka-indent, ha? And indent, indent. Okay. Debit cash. For this chapter, and maybe the succeeding chapters, ipakikita ko pa rin sa inyo ang impact ng bawat isang transaksyon sa accounting equation. Katulad na napag-aralan natin. Para parang nare-review na rin kayo. So, the asset, increase in asset, increase in capital. Okay. How do you journalize? Follow the simple steps. Date, debit, credit, brief description. This is the explanation. Brief. If you remember, the shorter the explanation, sinabi ko sa inyo yan, ay mas magaling sa accounting. Short, pero naintindihan. Tulad nito. Ang explanation, invested cash in net solution. Si Chris Clark yan. Alam naman natin na si Chris Clark yan because of the credit. Ano ginawa niya? Nag-invest siya ng cash in net solution. Nag-invest, naglagay ng pera. That is his personal investment to the business. Binagtanong nga pala yung difference ng bakit sa investment. Investment yan ni Chris Clark sa kanyang negosyo na Net Solutions. Okay. And posting reference, column is left blank when the journal entries. Diyan kasi nire-record kung saan para merong audit trail. Kung saan mo ini-record. Saan mo nilagay, anong ledger, at anong page ng journal. The transaction is initially entered in the record called a journal. Yun ang pinakita ko sa inyo. It's a journal. It's a book of original entry, the journal. The process of recording is journalizing. Saan ka nag-journalize? Sa journal. Journalizing is the process. And the entry is called a journal entry. Pagkatapos mo magawa yon, ang tawag na doon ay journal entry. Balikan natin ng konti. Journalizing, debit cash, credit, capital. Ang tawag na dito ngayon ay journal entry. Saan nire-record? Sa journal. Yan. Saan nire-record? Sa journal. Anong tawag doon sa pagproseso? Sa pag-process? Journalizing. At anong tawag sa sa pinroses mo journal entry. On November 5, di ba, bumili siya ng lupa, yung katabi ng building? Ang entry dyan ay debit land, credit, cash. Date, debit, indented ng credit cash, nabawasan ng cash. Purchase land for building site. Yan ang effect. Increase in asset, decrease in asset. Nabawasan ng cash na asset at nadagdagan ng asset kasi bumili ng land. Balansyado pa rin yan, di ba? Debit, credit, zero balance is equals to balance. November 10, bumili ng supplies, di ba? Inutang. On account. Debit supplies, credit accounts payable, purchase supplies on account. Increase in asset, which is supplies, and increase in liabilities, which is accounts payable. Okay. Pwede nyo naman itong reviewin kasi ipopost ko ito sa Canvas. I have to post this sa Canvas. Pwede nyo i-download, i-save nyo sa USB nyo, at pwede nyo ulit-ulitin. Pag marami naman kayong data, marami kayong Wi-Fi, may Wi-Fi kayo sa bahay, pwede nyo palabas yun to lagi, anytime, coming from the Canvas. I'm sorry, but I have to post this sa Canvas. Yun ang requirement ng TCC. And I have to follow. Oh, di ba kumita na siya? 7.5. Ano nangyari? Debit cash, increase in asset, credit fees earned, increase in owner's equity, which is fees earned. Yan. Okay. Balansyado, di ba? Okay. November 30, net solutions incurred the following expenses. Uy, nagastusan siya. Ang dami, di ba? Nagsweldo. Katapusan na kasi. Nagbayad ng rent, nagbayad ng utilities, kuryente siguro yan, miscellaneous 275. Anong entry? Debit, wages expense, debit, rent expense, debit, utilities expense, debit, miscellaneous expense, and credit cash, 3,650. Ang tawag dito ay compound entry. Yan, turo ko yan sa inyo. Wala yata yan sa libro. Compound entry. Pag maraming account, more than 2 compound entry. Pag naman dalawang account lang ang nagamit, ang tawag dyan ay simple entry. So ito ay compound entry kasi maraming account ang ginamit. So katulad nito, yung mga nakaraan natin ay puro yon simple entry. Kasi ang naapektuhan lang ay dalawang account. Ito yan. Yan, simple entry. Again, 2 accounts ang naapektuhan. Simple entry. Pag more than 2 accounts ang affected or may transaction, compound entry. Wala yan sa libro. Turo ko yan sa inyo. So, anong effects in accounting equation? There is an increase in expenses. Increase in expenses. Remember, pag nag-increase ang expenses, nababa ang owner's equity kasi debit. Di ba? Ang normal balance ng owner's equity ay credit. Narito yan, para itong T-account. So imagine niyo nga pala na imagine that the accounting equation is a simple T account. The total debit, At dito ang credit. So, imaginary T account ang accounting equation. Okay, ha? Patatandaan, huwag kakalimutan. Okay. And what is the corresponding effect sa left side? Decrease. Kasi nagbayad. Masyado yan. Kasi nadagdagan dito ng debit, nadagdagan dito ng credit. I'm sure may malilito sa inyo. Ganyan din ako. Nalito rin ako nung umpisa. Understandable yan na malito kayo. Maintindihan kong malilito kayo. Pero pag habang buhay naman kayo nalito, hindi ko na maintindihan. Dapat eventually maintindihan nyo. Again, as I have told you, you can ask questions. Okay. Oh, remember, di ba, nangutang siya ng supplies? Debit, accounts payable, credit cash. Anong effect niya sa transaction? Decrease in liabilities, decrease in asset. Nabawasan ng liabilities. Nabawasan ng cash. Balansyado. Now, di ba si Net Solutions ay bumili ng 1,350 on November 10? Noong November 30, binilang niya 550 na lang kasi nagamit na niya ang ilan? Ang 800. So debit supplies expense na yon. Yung 800 na nagamit niya ay expense na. Nabawasan naman ang supplies. At anong effect niyan? Increase in expense, which is a decrease in capital. Ha? Kasi ang normal balance ng owner's equity or capital ay credit. Nabawasan because nag-increase ang expense and decrease in asset, which is supplies. We call this an adjusting journal entry. Kasi kailangan mo nang i-adjust yung supplies kasi hindi na 1,315 supplies mo. 800 na lang. 550 na lang pala, I'm sorry. Nag-withdraw ng cash, di ba? 2,000. Ano entry? Debit Chris Clark drawing. Credit cash 2,000. Chris Clark withdrew cash for personal use and explanation. Remember the date. Debit, credit, indent. Indent. Ha? Mahigpit ako dyan. At yung comma, hindi pwede mawala yung comma. Decrease in asset and increase in drawing, which is a decrease in owner's equity. Kasi ang owner's equity ay credit balance. Normal balance yan. Di ba? Nag-withdraw ka ng cash. Panggamit mong personal. Ibig sabihin na nabawasan ang kapital mo. So, debit ang drawing. Okay. Example. Example to. Prepare journal entry for the purchase of a truck on June 3, 42,500, paying cash and the remainder on account. Anong sagot? Nasa libro rin yan. I'm sure nabasa nyo na. Sana. Debit truck, 42,500. Credit cash, 8,500. And credit accounts payable, 34,000. Bakit? Kasi 8,500 lang ang binayad niya. Nagsulong. Nag-down payment ng 8,500. Pero ang binili niya talaga ay truck na worth 42,500. And cash niya, 8,500 lang. Inutang niya yung balanse. Again, this is a compound entry kasi more than 2 accounts were affected. Okay. Now, na-analyze nyo na, na-journalize nyo na, what are you gonna do now? Post it sa ledger. You now post it to the ledger.